Okay, today's video is on two-way tables, so please make sure that you have that as your title. Okay, so student athletes. The data from a survey of 440 students are shown in the table as seen here. The students were asked whether or not they were on honor roll and whether or not they played a sport. Okay, so let's complete the Venn diagram. Only on honor roll is 115. Only playing a sport is 45. And those who are playing a sport and on honor roll is 250. Now, if you look at this and you add these up, that's only 410. So we're missing 30 students out of our 440. Those students are the kids that aren't on honor roll playing a sport and don't do both. So our relative frequency is the ratio of the value of the subtotal to the value of the total. So when we look at this, our honor roll is 115. Our sport players are 45, and those who do both are 250. The leftovers are the people that aren't on honor roll and don't play a sport. Those are only 30. The relative frequency of students that are on honor roll and playing sports are the 250 out of, and that's to all the kids that are on honor roll. So if we look at the honor roll kids, it's this 115 and this 250, so a total of 365. So that's where we get this fraction. So if we look at the relative frequency, is there evidence that students that play sports are also on the honor roll? 68% of the students that play sports are on the honor roll. So that is a good indicator that more than half of the students play and are on the honor roll. Okay, so a two-way table also shows us the same information that we had in the Venn diagram. Students that play a sport and are on the honor roll are 250. Students that play a sport and are not on the honor roll are 45. Students that don't play a sport but are on the honor roll were 115, and students that were neither were 30. So this two-way table helps us look and see how many people total play a sport. 250 plus 45, that's 295. How many total don't? 145. How many total are on the honor roll? 365. How many total are not on the honor roll? 75. And then the total of all the kids. It's just a different way of looking at things. And that's our focus today, is two-way tables. But you can use a Venn diagram if you want to help you create one. Okay, so how do we create one? Philippe surveyed students at his school. He found that 78 students own a cell phone. 57 of those students own an MP3 player. There are 13 students that do not own a cell phone, but own an MP3 player. 9 students do not own either device. Okay, that's a lot of information. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to construct our two-way table. We want to figure out what we want on there. Cell phones and MP3 players. So step 1, create a table with the information that you already have. MP3 player versus none, and then their totals. Cell phone versus none, and then the totals. So here we would have a total of, if we look at what he surveyed, let's erase what I have here. 78 students own a cell phone, okay? So that's the total in the cell phone grouping. 57 of them own the MP3 players, okay? Then there are 13 students that do not own a cell phone. So these 13 students are right here with no cell phone, but they own an MP3 player. Then 9 students do not own either device. These are no cell phone people, no MP3 people. So now we can fill in the table as we go. So we know that we can figure out this total. We can figure out this total, which means we can figure out this total. So 57 and 13. If we look here, that's 70, okay? 57 and 13 make 70. 13 and 9 make 22. 78 and 22 make 100. If you know that this is 78, then you can figure out that this is 21. And if you know that this is 70 and this is 100, then you know that this is 30. So as you go, you should be able to fill in new pieces. Okay, let's try this one. There are 150 children at summer camp and 71 are signed up for swimming. Okay, so think about that. 71 total are signed up for swimming out of 150 children. If there were a total of 62 children that signed up for canoeing, okay, so here's canoeing, 62. 28 of them also signed up for swimming. So looking through this, you've got some information. Go ahead and try it. See if you can fill in the rest of what we did here. Okay, I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. Okay, so you could figure out this one by taking 28 away from 62. You could also figure out this one by taking 71 away from 150. And you could figure out this one by taking 62 away from 150. From there, you can also figure out this one by taking 28 away from 71. And then with all of your stars filled in, you should be able to find that one last. Hopefully you did that, and these were the numbers you got. 43 here, 34 here, 88 here, 79 here. And you know that if you take 43 plus 45, you get 88. Take a look at this one. A two-way table can show the relative frequencies for rows or for columns rather than actual values. By analyzing the relative frequencies in a two-way table, you can determine possible associations. So you can figure out how they're associated. Okay, so the first thing that we do is to find the relative frequencies. We look at cell phones solely out of the 78. So when we look at cell phones, 57 out of 78 own an MP3 player. The frequency is happening 73% of the time. If we look at cell phones again, people with no MP3 player, you would put over the 78, and that's happening 27% of the time. Down here, people with no cell phones, out of 22, that have an MP3 player happens 59% of the time, just for the no cell phone people. And no MP3 people happens 9 out of 22 times, and that's just the no cell phone people that don't have MP3s. So that's one way that you can find those relative frequencies. I'm going to move that one up here. What if we're not looking in that direction? What if instead we're looking at the MP3s? That changes things for us. Okay, we would be looking at 70. So based on our relative frequency, if we're just looking at cell phones of 78 and no cell phones of 22, there is a relative frequency of 73 hundredths in one of the cells. Okay, so you can imply that most people own a cell phone, own an MP3 player. The data suggests that it's over half. Okay, so find and interpret the relative frequencies of the students in the survey column, round to the nearest hundredth. So we just did the cell phones. Now it's your turn to do the MP3 players. You're taking this 57 and you're looking at your totals of 70. Okay, go ahead and try it, and I'll be back in just a second to show you the answer. Make sure you round to the nearest hundredth if possible. Okay, so here's what you would do. So make sure that you've already tried it yourself. You would have your MP3 players out of 70, so 57 out of 70. You would also have your no cell phones out of 70, 13 out of 70. Okay, so these are your MP3 player owners that also own a cell phone and your MP3 player owners that don't own a cell phone. Over here, these are your non-MP3 player holders or owners, and out of those non-people, there's only 30. And 21 out of them own a cell phone. So even though they don't own an MP3 player, some of these, 70%, own a cell phone. Only 30% do not. So if we're looking at this one, the relative frequency is 81. This suggests that most people that own an MP3 player also own a cell phone. It also suggests that most people that don't own an MP3 player also own a cell phone. So really, most people own cell phones. All right, and that's all I've got for you today. I'll see you next time.